And so we're delighted today to have with us Alan Williams from the Westbury Mayfair, welcoming him to Condé Nast Johansson's here at Vogue House. Um, so essentially, we've asked you here today to ask you a few questions about your relationship with the Westbury and what it is that motivates your cooking. The first thing I'd like to ask you really is what is the philosophy behind your cooking and how has that sort of how's that fitted with the ethos at the Westbury?
Well, I guess my ethos is quite simple. It is simplicity, seasonality, fresh flavors, making food taste good,
Mm.
but taste of itself rather than play around too much and kind of create hybrids of things. I like to keep things fairly relatively simple. I don't put more than sort of three or four things on any one dish,
Hmm.
and it's just you know elegance. I suppose that's
Yeah,
kind of where the fit is between myself and
yeah,
or what I do and the Westbury, how it follows through. I think is that kind of you know elegant, simple elegance really,
mm,
and good service for a start, which is
yeah,
the the very first step to having a good restaurant is to
yeah,
have good service.
yeah,
Food aside,
yeah.
service is more important.
So do you think your approach to service has changed since you've been at the Westbury, or has that always been at the forefront of your
Yeah,
mind?
no, I don't think it's changed. I think it's been reinforced.
Yeah.
So when I arrived at the Westbury, it was a conscious effort to establish a style of service
Mm,
that we've maintained and we've hopefully improved on. So yeah, I'd worked in some nice restaurants that had a big focus on good service anyway. So I wanted to come and just put my little touch on that and
yeah,
make sure that the service was relaxed, informal, but still very very professional
yeah,
and comforting.
yeah.
And I think that's pretty much what we find throughout the hotel.
Hmm. Yeah. So obviously, as we are Johansson's and we are a travel guide primarily,
Yeah,
I've got to ask you a little bit about travel.
yeah,
So I know that you've spent a bit of time in India, in France, in Colorado skiing, I think.
yeah, yeah.
How has that influenced your sort of approach to cooking and your approach to flavors, I suppose?
Well, travel's kind of probably up there within my top three favorite things to do.
Hmm.
My big passion really is travel. So I try and get out as much as I can. I do quite fortunately with this job, we get to travel quite a lot. So you get nicely invited to do different things. And yeah, certainly those places that you mentioned, India was God. I was 21 when I was in
Mm.
India, so that was a life turning point for me. It
Hmm.
was it flipped everything that I knew on its head, including food. Because before I went to India, I never really ate spicy food.
Hmm.
When I came back, it was I was addicted to it, and it's been like that ever since. I love highly flavored spicy food. So that changed a lot, but it changed my whole approach to life.
Hmm.
Everything that I knew about life changed then. Colorado was just good fun. I
Yeah.
was a snowboard instructor
Oh
and a
wow.
guide over there. I still cook, but I was my sort of main focus there was getting up on the mountain as
Yeah.
much as I possibly could.
Hmm.
Food wise, I guess America is not, especially Colorado, not famed for its high cuisine,
Hmm.
but I think that whole kind of casual American thing did influence me.
Mm.
I put fried chicken and ranch dressings and things like that on my menu reasonably often, I guess. So
Yeah.
those sort of things rub off. But recently, I mean, this year I've been influenced by the travels that I've done. I've been to Switzerland this year and I've been to Mauritius, which both have translated to dishes on the menu.
Hmm.
So I came back from Switzerland having had probably the best fondue that anyone could ever eat,
Mm.
and I put a fondue dish on. Just my take on a fondue.
Yeah.
And from Mauritius, a spice blend that I learned while I was over there, and
Hmm.
that's one of the more favourite dishes on my menu now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's really interesting. So, I mean, I suppose sort of linking into that, obviously, Chef Stock has just happened, I mean, fairly recently. I don't know.
4 years,
Is it
yeah,
really
4 years, yeah, we've
years?
done four, yeah.
Well, obviously, you've had people from all over the world
Mm,
coming to, contribute towards that.
yeah.
I mean, how was that experience for you? I mean, has that changed your approach? I mean,
Always. I mean,
Yeah.
I think whenever you get like-minded people coming together and people who have such passion towards what they're doing
Mhm.
and a love. I mean, we're chefs are essentially geeks. We live and breathe food. We don't really talk about it a lot more,
Mhm.
you know. And we go home and read about it. We're not particularly interesting creatures unless you want to talk about food. So snowboarding as an exception, but
Yeah.
when you get people, and especially when we invite people from sort of four corners of the world, really, you
Mhm.
know, we've had chefs from as close as Cornwall and as far away as Singapore,
Mhm.
and then South Africa, and this year we had Anna Ross from Slovenia, so she brought a completely new angle to what we were doing. We've had chefs from all over the place, which number one, it's interesting to see what they do. But just to talk to these guys and to get inside their heads a little bit,
Mhm.
but to cook together as well. You know, it's a very friendly, um, uh, convivial type of industry, and
Mhm.
we all love to share and
Mm.
to just to work together. And so that just in itself is inspirational,
Yeah.
and along with that, you learn new things, and it makes you look at food in a different way and your
Mhm.
style of things in a different way.
Yeah. So was there, I mean, was there any one person or one sort of attitude that you encountered during that experience that really was something, you know, completely out of the blue for you, something that you'd never really thought of before?
Over the years, it's
Mm.
probably been the people that I've least expected to have such an impact on me that have had the most impact.
Mhm.
I think the one in particular was she was South African, Margot Jans.
Mhm.
Had a restaurant. She's no longer there, unfortunately, called Le Quartier Français, and I wasn't sure what was going to come out of South Africa. And people had said to me, "Really, you're going to get South Africa? You know, the ingredients, food is not that great,
Mm.
really." And she blew my mind with the things that she was doing and the
Mm.
flavors that she introduced me to, and some of the techniques, unbelievable. And she was probably one of the most beautiful souls I've ever met as
Really?
well. She was massively giving, you know,
Mhm.
and she was so happy in her work, and it was really a really lovely
Yeah.
experience. It was probably the best out of all of them.
Yeah.
But
Have,
then again, they've all been pretty close. You know, I
mm.
haven't had a single one that I've thought, oh, I wish I didn't invite them.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose that's one of the blessings of like meeting people from around the world is that
Mm.
you do get this chance to look at things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So do you have future plans for Chef Stock or Chef Stock like events? I mean,
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll probably keep going with Chef Stock.
mhm.
It's a big thing to organise. It's only 4 chefs, but it still takes about half a year to get
Yeah.
everything sorted out. So we usually start talking about this around Christmas time,
Mhm.
what we're going to do, what we plan to do. But there'll always be one collaboration or another, whether it's somebody coming to me or me going elsewhere.
Mhm. So my next question, and this is a difficult question, obviously. What have been or what are your favourite flavour combinations to work with when you know, or have been since you've been at the Westbury? Well, maybe I should ask.
It's really hard because they change.
Hmm.
So as the seasons go on and as each year goes on, you're introduced to new things, and
Mm.
so flavour combinations change. And I think that's probably one of the most exciting things about what we do is that it's never static. We're never doing the same thing over and over and over again, you know, for years on end, and being tired and bored with what we do. So that the great thing about the job is always sort of exploring and
Hmm.
looking for not new combinations as such, because you know there's the old adage of what grows together goes together. So there are certain things that we know are going to work.
Hmm.
You know that, for example, in the summer, basil and mozzarella and
Hmm.
tomatoes is a winner.
Yeah.
What you do with it is another thing. You know, you
Hmm.
can take those flavors, and you can take flavors that are familiar to you and turn them into something that looks or feels unfamiliar.
Hmm.
So I guess for one of the things that I've done that is probably one of the more not challenging in a nice way, was we made a dish with baked potato, and it said baked potato on the dish. And the baked potato that we do is quite a lengthy process
Mm-hmm.
turn a baked potato into a foam.
Right.
So we take baked potatoes and we bake them really hard, so you get the flavour of the flesh,
Mm-hmm.
or the skin all the way through the flesh. Sorry. And then you turn it into sort of a thick soup and put it into a gas siphon, and you turn it into this sort of fluffy foam and sprinkle it with dried baked potato skins. We powder them, and it tastes just like a baked potato. And we put some baked beans under it as well,
Yeah.
which was sort of home barbecue baked beans, and served it with quail. Quail's not necessarily what you would have on your baked potato
Mm-hmm.
at home, but the whole dish, people were looking at it thinking it said baked potato, and then you eat it, boom, and then you've got this massive baked potato flavour,
Yeah.
which is, it's good fun. It's something that's sort of, it's quite playful, but also it's serious too, because you're taking something that people know, and this flavour that is familiar to everybody, I guess, and turning it into something that's a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fun part. Of the
job. Yeah. So if you had to pick one dish that sort of typifies your relationship with the Westbury, or sort of represents it well, which would it be?
One dish. Well, I could say that. I think the dish with the Mauritian spices right now is my favourite. I can't say that because I've got 2 or 3 favourites right now. But the Mauritian. So here's the thing. I've got 2 dishes that kind of show that whole travel thing as well. So I've got the Mauritian dish. So it's called a roche carré. Roche carré, directly translated from French, means square stone. And in Mauritius, they grind their spices on this square rock. But it's the way they do it, and the kind of combinations of flavors that they put in, because it's Indian Ocean, and they've got these influences from Africa, but also from India and Southeast Asia and so on. It's kind of a hybrid mix of spices. So we've got, I think there's about 32 different ingredients in this one curry paste, basically. But it's sweet, it's spicy. We've got tamarind and coconut and apple and a whole load of spices. It's just really, really fragrant. And we make a sauce out of it, sort of a fluffy, creamy sauce. But it's got a real deep, intense flavour. And we serve it with monkfish with fresh coconut and cashew nuts. Really delicious. So that at the moment is possibly my favourite. But then I've got another dish, which is a foie gras, which I really, very rarely use foie gras. But I wanted to do a steamed dumpling, like a Shanghai steamed dumpling.
Yeah.
I wanted to take that somewhere else and do something very different. So I fill it with some vegetables that are Asian, but also smoked eel and confit foie gras. And we make a dashi, sort of a cold infusion with that, which is quite intense.
Yeah.
So I do that, this foie gras and smoked eel Shanghai dumpling, which is a little bit left field too. But it's really, really nice to eat.
I mean, sounds really good. So I mean, I've read a little bit about what you've been doing since you've been at the Westbury. I think one of the things that I found quite interesting was sort of learning about how you work quite closely now with the sommelier, and how sort of like pairing food with wine and beer has maybe, I don't know, influenced your cooking, or maybe influenced your views on flavour.
Yeah, well, I guess wine and food is as old as the hills, and to grow as a chef, you have to have an appreciation of certainly what goes on in the front of the house, but the whole sommelier part of things as well. So I was interested in wine before. When I worked for Gordon Ramsay, I got interested in wine, and we got to taste some really incredible wines while working for him. There were a lot of good bottles opened, and occasionally you would get to taste some, and so it opened up my palate and my mind to what wine and food do together, and how they sort of cohabit. And so coming to the Westbury, it was, again, because I was opening my own place, it's a natural thing to want to get that right. So we built this wine room, which is sort of a private dining room, but with the wine cellar around it. So that was a really nice visual thing, but to get the wines right in there, and to also pair wines that were in there with the food that you're doing is really important. The beer thing came a bit later on, so I was a bit of a cynic, to be honest, when it came to beers, and then I was just introduced to the range, and my restaurant manager at the time took me down to Cornwall, and we went to a brewery in Rock in Cornwall,
Mm-hmm.
Sharps Brewery, who I'd heard of. They do a nice beer called Doombar, which you get in the pub.
Yeah,
It's delicious beer.
it is.
But that's all I knew about them. And we went and I met one of the guys that worked there who was so passionate about beer. It's unbelievable. And he basically sat us down and gave us, I think it was about 18 beers. And it went from this very simple, really lovely, fresh, clean lager, all the way through from that to sort of IPAs and darker beers and stouts. And then the last one that we had was this bowl conditioned stout that was 23% ABV. So it was basically a liqueur. And it tasted, opened it up and it smelled like rum, and it had this sort of real heavy sort of sugarcane type flavour to it. It was unbelievable. And that completely changed my opinion, my view on beer, because every beer that I tasted that day, I was thinking about combinations. I was thinking about what it would go with and the sort of emotions it engendered as well. And just kind of the breadth that you could, where could you take this? What could you do with these flavors, and how could you make a dish and this beer exciting together?
Yeah.
And from day one, we had a beer flight on the menu. So we had, I think it was 12 beers at the start that we then chose to serve with different dishes. And I insisted that we always had a beer within the wine flight as well. So there's a little bit of a curveball that you'd have all this nice wine, and then for a particular dish, you would then serve beer. And sometimes it was with dessert as well. I used to serve a dark beer with a strawberry dessert because it had this sort of elderflower type aroma to it, which was really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay, so my final question, obviously sort of bringing it back a little bit to travel again. Do you have any immediate travel plan or future travel plans? If so, where?
There's always plans.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my next travel plan starts next Monday.
Oh, really?
So we close the restaurant for 2 weeks in August. As London kind of dies down, and I am going, and I've been going for the last sort of 12-13 years to the Bahamas.
Oh, nice.
Which is really nice. It's relaxing, but I do a bit of work out there as well. I do a little consultancy with a resort out there, which is really nice.
Yeah,
just a friendly thing, really.
Yeah.
Because I know them so well, and then I'm very proud to have been asked to represent the UK at the G7 summit this year.
Oh, wow.
So I'll be in Bergamo.
That's amazing.
Later on in the year in October, cooking for which is it's the agricultural summit. So all 7 nations have invited a chef to represent them and cook out there. So that's something, and I'm sure with 6 other countries cooking, I'll take something from that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's been really great talking to you. And I'm looking forward to paying a visit to the Westbury, I think.
Around the corner.
Yeah.